Hello. I've taken a story I received and adapted it into a narration from the informant's perspective, making it easy to understand. Today, I'd like to share something a bit serious with you. This happened last year at my friend Minsu's wedding after party, where I met a woman. Minsu has been one of my childhood buddies since we were kids, always taking the lead like a natural boss. Then, he got married. After living abroad and returning to Korea, I'd barely kept in touch or met up with anyone. But this time, I thought it'd be a rare chance to see old friends, so I decided to go. My wife and kids wanted to join too, and since the after party was at a place Minsu ran, no alcohol involved, I went along. It was great catching up with friends I hadn't seen in ages. My wife chatted with their wives, and the kids played with their peers. The after party wasn't just close friends. Tons of people showed up, all revolving around Minsu, the star of the wedding. There were folks from hobby groups and clubs too. Minsu's always been a lively guy since we were young, so I just figured the vibe was a bit unusual. About 450 people were there, I think. Minsu called it fate, splitting us into teams for games, and the mood was really good. Eventually my stomach was full, and the kids were getting sleepy, so I told Minsu I'd head out. He asked me to wait a second. Soon he grabbed the mic and introduced me as one of his oldest friends, calling me up front. "This guy does all sorts of cool stuff," he said. "I'm a mental health counselor by trade." People cheered, and though I felt shy, I was grateful to Minsu for making this moment in front of my wife and kids. He added, "He's got to leave for work, but if you're interested in helping out, grab his card." I dragged him up here for that. A bunch of people wanted my business card, so I ran to my car and handed them out. It was a happy day, and I headed home. A few days later, thanks to Minsu, some folks joined my nonprofit, and it helped my work too. Then, I got a call, but it hung up before I could answer. I figured they'd call back if it was urgent. Sure enough, they did. And when I picked up, they said, "I was actually at Minsu's wedding and after party. My name's Eunyoung." "Oh, hi," I replied. Eunyoung said, "I hesitated because I'm pretty shy." I told her I get it. I'm shy too. She wanted counseling, so I explained what I do and asked a bit about her past and current situation. From what she said, I thought general therapy might suit her better, so I was about to set that up. But Eunyoung said, "I've had some sessions already. I want a proper evaluation." "Okay," I said. "I'll check my schedule and get back to you." I couldn't call her right away and fell asleep. The next morning, I saw a text from her on my phone. "Why don't you have Kakao Talk? Don't you use it?" 3 messages like that. It felt urgent, so I figured I should meet her soon. First, I called Minsu. "Hey, do you know this number?" I gave him the digits and he said, "I don't recognize it, but if they were at the after party, they're probably a regular at my place or from some group." I called Eunyoung back and said, "My Kakao Talk's private, so I need to add people first. Sorry, I didn't save your number yesterday. I'll add you now and message you." I hung up and sent her a text. Her profile picture showed the woman who'd taken great care of the kids at the after party. I called Minsu again. "It's that person who played with the kids back then," I said. He replied, "Oh, probably reaching out about supporting your cause. She's capable. Give it a shot." I texted Eunyoung, "When can we do the counseling?" and arranged to meet a week later. She brought an iced grain latte, which I love, so I thanked her. She seemed calm at first, but as we talked, I could tell she'd been deeply hurt. She had strong depression and anxiety, plus sleep issues. It wasn't a huge deal, but she needed medication, so I referred her to a specialist I know. Things went on like that for a while. I don't check Kakao Talk much, but a few weeks back, Eunyoung messaged, "The psychiatric treatment isn't working. I want more counseling with you." I called her and said, "Sorry for not seeing your message. Let's meet at my office tomorrow." It's a space I use for free sessions, so we met there. The next day, she showed up with coffee and started talking. Her depression began a couple of years ago. Rooted in middle school, she felt invisible, with no friends. One day, a classmate mocked her looks and hit her. A boy stepped in to help, and she started liking him. They ended up in the same high school class, but she was still a loner while he kept looking out for her. Her feelings grew into love, and one day at the bike parking area, she confessed. He snapped, "Talk to me again and I'll kill you," rejecting her harshly. The shock made her drop out. Years later, she ran into that guy and his friends on the street. They recognized her and laughed. "Isn't that bogus?" "Yeah, it is," they said, mocking her. He just said, "She's bad luck. Let's go," and walked off. Seeing him again hurt her. She wanted revenge, but he'd grown taller and even cooler, making her want him more. So she made a big decision, to get surgery. When she brought it up at home, her dad got mad and stormed out, and her grandma yelled and hit her. "If I get surgery, I can make him mine. It'll fix everything and I'll start a new life," she thought. That night, her drunk dad came back and said, "Fine, do what you want." But her grandma snapped, "Don't be crazy. If you cut yourself, I'll die too," fiercely against it. Still, she felt her dad's words gave her a sliver of hope. Then her dad passed away from overwork, too much factory work and side jobs. Eunyoung cried, blaming herself for his death over the surgery money. Soon after, her grandma got dementia and turned violent, cursing and hitting her almost daily. But Eunyoung cared for her, thinking it was her fault. Years later, her grandma died too, leaving her all alone. Finally free from the pain, she thought, alongside, "With the insurance money, I can get surgery and live a new life." It creeped her out to think that way, but in counseling, I've heard worse, so I kept a straight face. She went through with the surgery and loved the results. She sold the house, moved into a commercial residential building, and bought a nice car. At first, she stayed indoors, but when the money started running low, she took up remote work. Revenge became her goal. She tracked down Jin-hoon, that guy, on Facebook, staking out his favorite PC cafe until she followed him to his house and workplace. One night, she pretended to bump into him at a club and spent the night with him. Seeing him not recognize her gave her a thrill. This is revenge, she thought. The next week, she ran into him again on his way home from work. They went to a hotel, and afterward he asked him, "How do you know my name?" In shock. "I'm Eunyoung. We went to the same high school," she said. Stunned, Jin-hoon started hitting her. She escaped to the bathroom and called the cops. He got off with a fine, but she kept showing up at his work and home, harassing him until his family moved away. She thought she'd finished her revenge, but then she got hooked on surgeries and did more. This time, she targeted Jin-hoon's girlfriend, Hye-jin. She visited a shaman she found online and learned that feeding someone the bone powder of a sick animal mixed with blood could kill them. She hesitated but decided, "To have Jin-hoon, I've got to do this." She got close to Hye-jin and started giving her lattes laced with bone powder and blood. For months, she gave Hye-jin those lattes with bone powder and blood. This is too much, she'd think, but convinced herself, if I want Jin-hoon, I have to do it. Nothing happened though. Then she switched to a different powder, and Hye-jin got really sick once. She recovered on her own, but Eunyoung thought it worked and kept going a few more times. Still, no big changes, so she gave up. Then she heard Jinhoon and Hyejin were getting married, and her depression hit hard. She even watched their wedding day, and afterward, she started treatment. That's how she ended up coming to me for mental health counseling. I said, "I had no idea about any of this. Didn't you talk to a specialist about needing meds?" She said no. "So what you just told me, is that real?" I asked. She didn't know. "I'm not even sure if I really did it or not," she said. "If it's true, that's a big deal," I told her. "I can't judge the legal stuff, but these aren't things you should do." She replied, "If it's something I should be punished for, I'll take it. I don't care if you report me or not." I wondered if she came to me to dodge legal trouble, but I said, "I won't report you, but if this is real, go to the police, tell them everything and face whatever comes. That's the first step to a new life." She nodded. "Okay." Back home, I felt uneasy and called Minsu. "You went to Bijong Middle School, right?" I asked. "Yeah, why?" he said. "Just curious," I replied and hung up. I worried Jinhoon might be Minsu, but since Minsu went to Bijong, I figured it was fine. A few days later, Minsu told me, Eunyoung took her own life. In my line of work, I hear about this stuff a lot. When I get word, I go to the funerals, but this time, I didn't want to. Still, I went with Minsu. There was a chief mourner, and I introduced myself. "I'm here from a non-profit, a friend of Minsu's." I didn't eat and just waited around. Then a woman approached me. "Hi, I'm Hyejin's youngest aunt Sumi. Thanks for coming," she said. I gave her my card and said, "I counseled Eunyoung a few times, it's a shame." She told me, Eunyoung was her name before she changed it. Sumi added, "She lost her mom young and struggled mentally. I feel like I didn't take good enough care of her. After her brother passed, we lost touch, and I only heard about her grandma-in-law later." Minsu came back, greeted Sumi, and she said, "I'd like to call you once things settle." I told her, "Whenever you're ready." We crashed at a sauna and went home the next day. A few days later, Sumi called and we met at my office. I offered some counseling to help her feel steady, and she asked, "Do you know anything about what Eunyoung went through or felt before she died?" Since she was family, I figured it was okay to share most of it, leaving out the shaman part, and told her everything. Sumi cried, saying, "She must have been so lonely on her own." She told me about the day she went to sort through Eunyoung's stuff. The house had a living room and 2 bedrooms, but it felt empty, like no one lived there. Maybe she'd cleared it out before making her choice. Who knows? Sumi tidied up and talked to the landlord, who said, "There's a storage room up on the roof. Clear that out too." She found a key, opened it, and inside were a notebook, some incense smell, 2 urns, and a fridge. In the fridge, there were medicine bottles with clotted red liquid. Sumi thought it looked like blood and got chills. The urns were labeled with her grandma's and dad's names. The notebook had a list of dates. The grandma's urn was empty, but the dad's was full. "Where's Grandma? And what are these dates?" she wondered, planning to check with her brother later. I thought, was that bone powder and blood story real? Was the sick animal her dementia-stricken grandma? It hit me. The bone powder from a sick animal was her grandma's ashes. Sumi saw my face and asked, "What's wrong?" I calmed down and explained. She nearly collapsed from the shock, but kept listening. "She turned out like this from loneliness and trauma as a kid. It kills me that I didn't see it," she said. I got so anxious I stepped out to make a call and bought cigarettes at the convenience store downstairs. The world spun as I called Minsu. Minsu, I said, tearing up. What's going on? He asked. My mouth wouldn't move, but I forced out, Is Jinhoon you? After a pause, he said, How do you know her? Did she contact you? He called it a trauma. Come to my office now, I said. 20 minutes later, he arrived. The three of us talked for a long time, and I realized Hyejin was Minsu's wife. It was the most shocking day of my life. All we had was evidence, but with Eunyoung gone, there was no one to hold legally accountable. Sumi keeps in touch, apologizing constantly. We guess those notebook dates were when she gave Hyejin the lattes. Luckily, none matched my counseling days. Minsu struggled with daily life from the trauma, but Hyejin cared for him until he bounced back. Recently, we went on a couples trip, and they were still so close. Hyejin said, I hate scary stuff. Tell me about it later. Her strength blew me away. After that day, life got busy again, but I couldn't forget what happened. As a mental health counselor, I meet all kinds of people, but Eunyoung's story stuck with me hard. Whether it was real or just in her head, I'm not sure, and that lingering unease stayed. My talks with Sumi, the blood in the fridge, and the words on that notebook kept circling in my mind. I'm used to bottling up these feelings as a counselor, but this time felt different. Seeing Minsu and Hyejin doing well was a relief, though Eunyoung's end still got to me. I'll never know if she went to the police or spilled the truth. Maybe what we found in that room was all her heart had left to say. Sumi finished sorting her stuff and stopped calling. I kept counseling others after that, but cases as extreme as Eunyoung's are rare. Sometimes I'd ask Minsu over the phone, Remember that time? He'd laugh. I want to forget it. Hyejin's still tough, holding Minsu up, and I admire that. Sharing this with you all made me rethink how complex people's minds can be. Eunyoung's choices, Jinhoon, and Hyejin's lives. Oh, and the Jinhoon she talked about was Minsu, and my counseling experience all wove together into this one story. I joked with Minsu once, what if I drank one of those lattes too? But it just stayed a laugh between us. This narration ends here, but what do you think of it? As a mental health counselor, I'm always listening to people's stories, trying to help them find a way through. Eunyoung's tale left a big mark on me, one I won't forget. That's it.